hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
Okay, hello guys, welcome to another video in basically a series now with look in ecology. So today we're going to be looking at resources and their limits. So let's go through the objectives. So basically today we're just going to define the term resources, describe the impact of human activity on natural resources, discuss the importance and difficulties encountered in recycling manufactured materials. So we'll just dive in a little bit, not too deep, but just a little bit enough. But before we do that, we're going to lay some foundation. So basically what we're going to be doing is a little recap. So if you should well I'd love for you to ensure that you watch the video that was out before, the video on population ecology. So you need to ensure that you watch that video first and then you move on to this one. So in that video we covered things like population, like what's population, a group of organisms that belong to the same species and occupy basically the same geographical area. Look at the population size and things that affect the population size, such as food, space, predation, competition, disease, natural disasters, invasive species, immigration, and so forth. Population growth curve, we looked at that also. Look at the log phase, the transition and stationary phase. And we look at the carrying capacity of an environment, and we work that out to be the total number of individuals that the environment can sustain. So basically mankind has used technology in various ways to overcome limiting factors in their environment, and we looked at all of those in our last video. So today now we're going to look at what are resources, and the resources would be the features of the environment which can be used by the human society. So any feature or any aspect of the environment that is being used by the human society for their own benefit, then we can consider that to be a resource. There are many types of resources, such as you have mineral resources. We list some of them there: bauxite, gold, sand, marl, limestone. We have the soil itself is a resource, right? Because it is the medium for plant growth. It is the home of a lot of organisms. All right. Biotic resources include the freshwater resources, the seawater resource, the fish that lives in the sea as a resource, the animals, the plants, all of those. We use them as a resource. We use plants mainly for food, but we also use plants in construction, because we get wood from plants, we get paper from plants, we get certain dyes from plants, right? So all of these are what we term biotic resources, because these are the living aspects of the environment that we use to benefit ourselves. Fuel and other energy resources would include like petroleum, liquefied natural gas, coal, solar energy, nuclear energy, hydro energy, where we use the water to generate energy. And funny enough, human beings themselves are resources, because we employ persons based on their skills, their talents, their knowledge, and we use them, right? So when you have somebody who's employed in companies, you have areas, you have department in companies that we call the human resource department, right? So they do the outsourcing, or they try to get persons with certain skills. So resources is not just limited to plants, animals, it's also inclusive of the human beings as well. Alright, so resources fall into two major categories. They can be renewable resources, and that is those resources that can be reused. They can be used continuously, and if they are exhausted, they can be replaced very quickly. Right, and examples of those would include the sunlight, the wind, the geothermal energy, the biomass energy, water. All of those are renewable resources. You don't run out of them. Alright, and even if you chop down all the trees right now, if you give it a short period of time, they start to grow back again. So those are renewable resources. The other category is non-renewable resources. Non-renewable resources are those that are limited in supply, and they take a good time, a very long time to replenish. Such a long time that when they are exhausted, we tend to say that they are, finished. We don't have any more. So resources that are non-renewable include coal, natural gas, nuclear energy, and fossil fluids, which would include the petroleum or the heavy crude oil that you hear that they extract from the earth, right? So resources, these are features of our environment. We use them for our benefit, but they fall in two major categories: renewable and non-renewable. Now, locally, like in Jamaica, locally we use resources. We have a few energy resources that we would like to highlight. So we have resources such as petroleum, natural gas, solar energy, wind energy, and hydro energy. But if you look at how we manage or how we use the energy resources that we have in Jamaica, you'd realize that 74%, and this is a rough estimate that was taken from a study done in 2018, and the rough estimate suggests that we largely depend on petroleum energy, right? And the next best would be the natural gas, solar, wind, and hydro. So notice that the renewables, such as the solar, the wind, and the hydro, are in the smallest category, right? The resources that are renewable are in the smallest category. So you can understand and appreciate that based on Jamaica's situation, we are in a little bind when it comes to our energy resources, because our energy resources, we are very heavily dependent on resources that are non-renewable, are energy sources that are non-renewable, which means that we have to be careful. So what we noticed that the government has been doing for a couple of years now is to try and balance back our energy consumption, or our energy sources rather, and try to include more renewable energy sources in Jamaica, so that the country can have a more stable and steady foundation for energy. So a few local resources are sources of energy, would be those. So basically what we have is corporations in Jamaica that really help to bring that use up these resources, right? So we have Petrojam, which is our company here in Jamaica that really gets the crude oil and refines it and sell. And so the petrol that we get in our vehicles are produced based on the blends that they do at Petrojam. We have other we have another company, Jamaica Power Service, right? They buy the every diesel oil as well, and they use that to power generators to provide the electricity that we all have in our homes. But apart from that, there are renewable energy plants in Jamaica. There is a plant, there's one in St. Elizabeth, where they actually, and in St. Catherine as well, where they have dams where they use the water and to generate electricity. We have bauxite plants that also use that also generate electricity because they use the same heavy fuel oil and they do the same generation, but they do not commercialize. They are not a commercial source, so they don't outsource electricity. The JPS company does that. All right, but what the bauxite companies are known for is that they are the ones that extract Jamaica's mineral resource, and the major mineral resource that Jamaica possess would be bauxite, right? And that is where we create, that is used to make aluminum, right? Aluminum, good. And we have also another resource that we are just tapping into, limestone, and another one called rare earth metals. That's another one that the country has been tapping into more recently. Gold, there's been a few areas around Jamaica where gold was discovered, and a few companies came in from overseas, and they mine out the gold, and they're collecting gold and them gone. All right, so we have a few mineral resources here, and the bauxite is still the main one, and it is being used to generate foreign exchange or income for the country. So these mineral resources are very important as when it comes on to the economy. All right, so there are a few companies. Caribbean Cement, all right, they mainly might depend on the limestone aspect. Jamaica, Noranda are just two examples of bauxite companies. So anybody who travels all the way down to Discovery Bay, on your way back to Ucherias, you will pass Noranda bauxite, and if you are from Clarendon, down south Clarendon, you will be familiar with Jamaica Cement, Caribbean Cement. There's a factory that is that's all the way out there in Kingston, right, in Kingston. Okay, so what we have these resources, but remember that most of them are limited. They are non-renewable, so we have to preserve what we use, and in order to do that, we have to reduce our consumption of these resources. So we have to be careful how we use them, because we don't get them back very quickly. They take a very long time to come back, and sometimes they don't come back any at all. And as you can see, we depend on them for foreign exchange, we depend on them for energy, so we need to take very good care of them. So therefore, in order to preserve these resources as much as possible for our future generations, people are being taught to do three things, and those three things that they are being taught to do is to reduce, reuse, and recycle, right? And reduce, reuse, and recycle is a mantra that is being taught to our generation now, so that we can preserve our limited resources. Alright, so when we say reduce, we're talking about cut down on the amount of materials that you use. Good. So materials, such resources that are manufactured. So materials that are manufactured, example, plastics, paper, metal, glass, textiles or fabric that are used in households, homes, schools, offices, factories, etc. Right? These materials are discarded because they are worn out and used up, and they no longer serve any purpose. And once materials are used up or they don't have no more purpose, people tend to just discard them. So we generate a lot of garbage, right? And these form what we call domestic waste or solid waste. So if we don't reduce the amount of materials that we use up, then we are going to continue to increase the amount of solid waste that we produce. And if you look in the picture there, this picture should be coming from somewhere out the harbor, Kingston Harbor, right? You can see all forms of solid waste, piece of chair, a ton load of plastic bottles. We don't have to go through all of that because you know what I'm talking about. Good. So what we need to do is to reduce the amount of waste that we use. All right, but want to ensure that you understand also this term biodegradable, because some wastes are biodegradable and some are not. So when materials are discarded into the environment, some of these materials break down naturally into simpler, harmless forms by the actions of microorganisms such as bacteria and fungi. Good. So any material that is able to be broken down via a natural process, it can be through bacteria, or it can naturally, based off some chemical reaction, break down naturally, right? These materials are going to be termed biodegradable. Anything that that breaks down via some natural process, we call it biodegradable. So example, organic materials such as paper and some plastics and some fabrics are easy biodegradable material, mean that they are easily broken down over via the natural process. Good. So biodegradable material broken down naturally. Non-biodegradable material now, as you would see, is the opposite. These are materials that are not broken down naturally and they take a very long time, right? So most plastics, glass, metals, styrofoam, especially styrofoam, right? These materials now are non-biodegradable, and because they don't break down naturally, then they tend to stay in the environment a very long time and they become a nuisance, right? So important that you understand that, right? So biodegradable and non-biodegradable. Alright, so by simply reducing the accumulation of these manufactured materials, you can reduce your waistline. So that's a slogan that I found on the internet, reducing your waistline, because most time when persons hear that, they think about losing weight. We probably need to use some of the bad weight in the environment. The bad weight would be the heap of garbage that we have stored up in the environment, right? So we can do this, just buy what you need, don't buy extra materials, right? So buy what you need, buy materials that last a long time, buy materials that can serve for more than one purpose, right? So a good move by the government of Jamaica in a couple of years ago was the banning of single-use plastic and styrofoam, right? It is argued that maybe the implementation is weaker and they're not following up on it, but at least they started. So that's a move in the right direction. So what we have now is that people, you don't buy scandal bag in Jamaica was like a nuisance. It's something you see everywhere, and that's something we break down easily, and it tends to clog up drains, and when they get into aquatic environments they can cause problems. We will look at that in a future video coming up next. We look at how these things impact the environment, all of the activities that man have, what kind of problems they're causing for the animals in the environment. But for today we're looking at how we can reduce our waistline. So as we said before, reducing means buy what you need, buy stuff that serve long, buy stuff that serve more than one function. That's what we do to reduce the accumulation of manufactured material, and so reduce the waste. So when we say reuse, we mean some materials can be reused in the same way or in other ways. So for example, when I purchase chiffon butter, when the butter is finished, we normally just wash out the pan and we can use it as a little container to store stuff in. So when you look in my garbage pan, you won't find a whole heap of chiffon butter, because maybe after the containers get a lot, when you have a whole heap of them, then you can throw away or burn one or two, or whatever method you use to properly dispose of the garbage, right? But it takes a while before I start to discard plus chiffon butter. Many persons here, you go to KFC and know you buy famous bowl have this black bottom container and this clear top that can be used to store something in, to store food in after you eat out your famous bowl. So what we are saying is that the materials that we have, we can reuse them. we can reuse them for the same purpose, or we can find other purpose to give to them. All right, so that's what we mean to reuse materials. Also, instead of throwing away things, we can take them to create, to be creative, to create new things. Look at this. This is a few images that I took from the internet as well. See one here where the person is actually using a cup to hold candle wax, a grater to hold some form of earrings. They use the fork to, like, they design some, you know, like where you hang your coat on the door, stuff like that. A bicycle spokes thing they turn into a clock. Some jars used to hold flowers. Look at these water boots down here. They're colorful and they're pretty, and they're actually being used to grow plants. They serve as a flower pot. Well, this would be called a flower boot. Alright, but these are the kinds of things that we are referring to when we say reuse. Change the function, or if not, find another way to use it over again for the same function. You cut down the amount of solid waste you have when you apply this kind of tactic to how you operate every day. And finally, they say recycle. Recycle. What do we mean by recycle? This is basically a bigger process. So this process now is mainly controlled by, you know, a larger organization. This is a well-designed process how we go about doing things. So basically what it means is basically to collect materials from the waste stream. So you have areas that are identified as for collecting waste, right? So it means that from the waste stream now, you would collect waste, separate them, remark them, make them into new products, market them, and reuse the material as new products. But if you look at that now, you realize, basically this thing here going to require a lot of organization, a lot of persons involved to get this thing up and running. So whilst recycling is a whole process of collecting waste, remodeling it, and then putting it back into the market for new use, it can have some challenges. Good. So basically we're looking at the advantages and the disadvantages. Obviously, advantage is that materials will not be used up as quickly. So we're not going to just dash away things like that, because we're going to send them to a processing plant that's going to get them in for another use and to make some form of new product. Less land needed for disposal of waste sites. So if we do more recycling, we don't need no whole heap of dump site like Riverton to go dump garbage, right? If we do recycling, we have less toxic waste generated, because we find other avenues to put these materials into and get them out as new products. So we have less toxic waste, less harm done to animals from materials like plastics. As I said before, in our upcoming video, we'll be looking at how things like plastic cause serious harm to organisms in our environment. And less pollution. So you don't have people burning garbage all over the place. They start to sort out them garbage and, you know, have it sent to a recycling center. So some of the challenges though that are associated with the whole recycling process include collecting the recyclables. This can be very tedious. I know this from experience, because first you have to go actually separate the containers to collect the recyclable materials. If the factory is far from where the recyclable waste is being collected, then you have to go think about transportation to get it all the way from where it is to where you want it. It requires education, and everybody are going to have the time to sit down and say, okay, plastics go here, metal cans go here, jars go over there. People don't have it. People tend to don't want to do that. They're always busy and want to move fast. Everybody just throw everything in a one garbage can and just move on. And as we said, transportation that are going to be required, that's going to require financing. And if the government are pay for this collect garbage, then if you go pay if you go collect recyclables again now, People are saying they don't have no money for do that. Government has no money for do that. Recyclable materials, that's going to require storage space. We already have struggled to find space to store garbage. Now if we go find places to store recyclable material, that also presents a challenge. So we have to take these things into consideration when we talk about recycling. It is a very good thing, but bear in mind that there are some challenges. Not to say that this process is something we must pursue. It is something that we should pursue. This logo 360 recycle is a project geared towards more sustainable farming practices and so on. So you can go and research that and look at 360 recycle. So research ideas for making less waste. So I want this information to impact you, your decision and your environment, you as a person, and how you can impact your family. So find ways to make less waste. Less waste makes more life. There's a thing called cleanliness is next to godliness, and now we are saying less waste make more life. So I'm challenging you to find very creative ways to reduce the amount of waste that is at your home or that is generated from your home, right? And find ways where you can reuse the materials and use materials that are longer lasting. And try, apply things like, as I said before, instead of just use the container one time and then throw it away, try to use the container for another purpose. It does reduce the waste. So finally, let us summarize what we did today. We looked at humans have used many natural resources such as the minerals. We talk about the mineral things. We focus heavily, or actually we focus specifically on Jamaica. We talk about the mineral resources, the biotic resources, water, soil, fuel, all of these resources, natural, right, and how we use them. Resources, they are all features of the environment and they are used by the society. They fall in two categories. We say that they are renewable and they are non-renewable, so that the renewable ones are ones that we use over and over again, are easy to replace, so we continuously have them. The non-renewable ones, they are limited in supply, and unfortunately, especially for our energy source, that resource that we use is petroleum. Our country is heavily dependent on that. We need to rebalance that now to get in more renewable resources for our energy source. Mineral resources such as bauxite, we depend on it heavily for foreign exchange to grow the economy. Manufactured materials such as plastics, metals, fabrics tend to lead to waste buildup in the environment, and so we tell you that you must reduce, reuse and recycle in order to cut down the waste we have in our environment. Alright class, I really do hope that you have learned something. Please make sure that you subscribe to the channel and please give a comment. Tell me if you're getting it, if you're learning something from these videos that I'm putting out, and make sure you share and share and share, because sometimes some persons actually never get it like this. I'm not saying that I put it the best way, but share information. The more you give me feedback is the better I can do this for you to ensure that we grow and move forward in education. Alright, all the best guys, thanks for watching.